If you were to spend 5 years in a study of history, while thinking of more and more things that your government should promise never to do, and then let your constitution be nothing but those negatives, I would not fear the outcome. What I fear most are affirmative actions of sober and well-intentioned men, granting to government powers to do something that appears to need doing. Please remember always that the lunar authority was created from the noblest of purposes by just such sober and well-intentioned men, all popularly elected. And with that thought, I leave you to your labors. Thank you. Go speak to you, President. Question of information. You said no involuntary taxation. Then how do you expect us to pay for things? Constable. Goodness me, sir. That's your problem. I can think of several ways. Voluntary contributions, just as churches support themselves. Government-sponsored lotteries, to which no one need subscribe. Or perhaps you congressmen should dig down into your own pouches and pay for whatever is needed. And that would be one way to keep government down in size to its indispensable functions, whatever they may be, if indeed there are any. I would be satisfied to have the golden rule be the only law. I see no need for any other, nor for any method of enforcing it. But if you really believe that your neighbors must have laws for their own good, why shouldn't you pay for it? Comrades, I beg you, do not resort to compulsory taxation. There is no worse tyranny than to force a spending we're doing. He was silent a long moment, then said, Manuel, my only ambition is to reach the day when I can stop pretending to be a chief executive. Is no answer. You have put your finger on the dilemma of all government, and the reason I am an anarchist. The power to tax, once conceded, has no limits. It contains until it destroys. I was not joking when I told them to dig into their own pouches. It may not be possible to do away with government. Sometimes I think that government is an inescapable disease of human beings. But it may be possible to keep it small and starved and inoffensive. And can you think of a better way than by requiring the governors themselves to pay the costs of their antisocial hobby? Still doesn't say how to pay for what we are doing now. How, Manuel? You know how we are doing it. We're stealing it. I'm neither proud of it nor ashamed. It's the means we have. If they ever catch on, they may eliminate us, and that I am prepared to face. At least in stealing, we have not created the villainous precedent of taxation.
Number 28, rank F.
Prof, I hate to say this. Then why say it? Because, damn it, I mean it as deeply as you are, and want to see that money paid back. Hate to say it, but what you just said sounds like hypocrisy. He chuckled. My dear Manuel, has it taken you all these years to decide that I am a hypocrite? Then you admit it? No, but if it makes you feel better to think that I am one, you're welcome to use me as your scapegoat. But I am not a hypocrite to myself because I was aware the day we declared the revolution that we would need much money, that would have to steal it. It did not trouble me because I considered it better than food riots 6 years hence, cannibalism in 8. I made my choice and have no regrets. I shut up, silenced but not satisfied. Stu said, Professor, I'm glad to hear that you are anxious to stop being president. So, you share our comrades' misgivings. Only in parts. Having been born to wealth, stealing doesn't fret me as much as it does him. But now that Congress has taken up the matter of a constitution, I intend to find time to attend sessions. I plan to nominate you for king. Prof looks shocked. Sir, if nominated, I shall repute it. If elected, I shall advocate. Don't be in a hurry. It might be the only way to get the sort of constitution you want, and that I want to, with about your own mild lack of enthusiasm. You could be proclaimed the king, and the people would take you. The lunaries aren't wedded to a republic. They love the idea. Ritual robes and a court and all that. No. Yada. When the time comes, you won't be able to refuse. Because we need a king and there isn't another candidate who can be accepted. Bernardo the First, King of Luna and Emperor of the surrounding species. Stuart, I must ask you to stop. I'm becoming quite ill. You'll get used to it. I'm a royalist because I'm a Democrat. I shan't let your reluctance for the idea any more than you let stealing stop you. I said, halt it, Stu. You said you are a royalist because you're a Democrat? Of course. A king is the people's only protection against a tyranny, especially against the worst of all tyrants themselves. Prof will be ideal for the job because he does not want the job. His only shortcoming is that he is a bachelor with no heir. We'll fix that. I'm going to name you as his heir. Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Prince Manuel de la Paz, Duke of Lunosity, Admiral General of the Armed Forces and Protector of the Weak. I stared, then buried face in hands. Oh, bug. Book 3. Tonstoffel. 23. Monday, 12 October, 2076. About 1900, I was headed home after a hard day of nonsense in our offices in Raffles. Delegation of grain farmers wanted to see Prof, and I had been called back because he was in Hong Kong Luna. Was rude to them. Had been 2 months of embargo, and FN had never done us favor of being sufficiently nasty. Mostly they had ignored us, made no reply to our claims. I suppose to do so would have been to recognize us. Stu and Sheeny and Prof had been hard put to slant news from Earthside to keep up a warlike spirit. At first, everybody kept his piece at handy. They wore them, helmets on their arms, going to and from work in corridors. But then slacked off as days went by, and did not seem to be any danger. Pea suit is nuisance when you don't need it. So bulky. Presently, tap rooms began to display signs. No pea suits inside. If a loony can't stop for half a liter on way home because of pea suit, he'll leave it home, or at station, or wherever he needs it most. My word, had neglected matter myself that day. Got this call to go back to office, and was halfway there before I remembered. I just reached easement lock 13 when I heard and felt a sound that scares a loony more than anything else. A chuff in distance, followed by a draft. Was into lock almost without undogging, then balanced the pressures and through, dogged it behind me and ran for our home lock, through it and shouting, "Pea suits, everybody! Get boys in from tunnels and close all airtight doors!" Mom and Miller were only adults in sight. Both looked startled, got busy without a word. I burst into the workshop, grabbed pea suit. "Mike, answer." "I'm here, ma'am," he said calmly. Heard explosive pressure drop. What situation? "That's level 3, L City. Rupture at Tube Station West. Now partly controlled. 6 ships landed L City under attack." "What?" "Let me finish, man. 6 transports landed L City under attack by troops. Hong Kong inferred to be. Phone lines broken at Relay BL. Johnson City under attack. I have closed the armored doors between J City and Complex under. I cannot see Novolin, but blip projection indicates it is under attack. Same for Churchill, Tycho under. One ship in high ellipsoid over me, rising, inferred to be command ship. No other blips. 6 ships, where in hell were you? They answered so calmly that I studied down. Far side approach, man. I'm blind back there. They came in on tight garrison didos, skimming the peaks. I barely saw the chop off for Lunar City. The ship at J City is the only one I can see. The other landings I conclusively infer from the ballistics shown by blip tracks. I heard the break-in at Tube West, L City, and can now hear fighting in Novolin. The rest is conclusive inference. Probability above 0.99. I called you and Professor at once. Cut breath. Operation Hard Rock. Prepare to execute. Program ready. Then, not being able to reach you, I used your voice. Playback. Yes, da. Heard myself tell watch officer at Old Catapult Head to go on red alert for Hard Rock. First load at lunch. All others on belts. Everything cast loose. But do not launch until ordered by me personally. Then launch to plan. Full automatic. I made him repeat back. Okay, I told Mike. Drill gun cruise. Your voice again. Manned and then sent back to ready rooms. The command ship won't reach Alpha Selenian for 3 hours, 4.7 minutes. No target for more than 5 hours. Him and maneuver, or launch missiles. Slow down, man. Even a missile I'll see with minutes to spare. It's full bright lunar up there now. How much do you want the man to take? Unnecessarily. Sorry. Better let me talk to Greg. Playback. Heard my voice talking to my co-husband at Mariandarum. I sounded tense but calm. Mike had given him situation. Had told him to prepare Operation Little David's Sling. Keep it on standby for full automatic. I had assured him that master computer would keep standby computer programmed, and shift would be made automatically if communication was broken. I also told him that he must take command and use own judgment if communication was lost and not restored after 4 hours. Listen to Earthside radio and make up own mind. Greg had taken it quietly, repeated his orders. Then it said, Manny, tell family I love them. Mike had done me proud. He had answered for me with just right embarrassed choke. I'll do that, Greg. And look, Greg, I love you too. You know that, don't you? I know it, Manny. And I'm going to say a special prayer for you. Thanks, Greg. Bye, Manny. Go do what you must. So, I went and did what I had to do. Mike had played my role as well or better than I could. Finn, when he could be reached, would be handled by Adam. So I left, fast, calling out Greg's message of love to Mom. She had pea-suited and Ryle's grandpa and suited him in, first time in years. So I went out, helmet closed, and laser gun in hand. And reached Lot 13, and found it blind dogged from other side with nobody in sight through bullseye. All correct, per drill. Except still Yagi in charge of that lock should have been in sight. Did no good to pound. Finally went back where I'd come, and on through our home, through our vegetable tunnels, and up to our private surface lock leading to our solar battery. And found a shadow on its bullseye when should have been scalding sunlight. Damn Terran ship had landed on Davis' surface. Its jacks formed a giant tripod over me. Was staring up at jets. Back down fast and out of there. Blind dogging both hatches. Then blind dogged every pressure door on way back. Told Mom, and told her to put one of boys on back door with her laser gun. Here, take this one. No boys, no men, no able-bodied women. Mom, Grant, and our small children were all that were left. Rest had gone looking for trouble. Mimi wouldn't take laser gun. Don't know how to use it, Manuel, and it's too late to learn. You'll keep it. But they won't get through Davis tunnels. I know some tricks you never heard of. Didn't stop to argue. Arguing with Mimi is a waste of time. And she might know tricks I don't know. She had stayed alive in Luna a long time, under worse conditions than I'd ever known. This time, Lock 13 was manned. 2 boys on duty let me through. I demanded news. Pressure's all right now, older one told me. This level at least. Fighting down toward Causeway. Say, General Davis, can I go with you? One's enough at this lock. Niet. Wanna get me an earthworm? This is your post. Stay on it. If an earthworm comes his way, he's yours. Don't you be his. Left at a trot. So as a result of own carelessness, not keeping peace with me, all I saw at Battle of Corridors was tail end. Hell of a defense minister. Charged north in a ring corridor with helmet open. Reached access lock for long ramp to Causeway. Lock was open. Cursed and stopped to dog it as I went through. Warily. Saw why it was open. Boy who had been guarding it was dead. So moved most cautiously down ramp and out on the Causeway. Was empty at this end, but could see figures and hear noise in city, where it opens out. 2 figures in pea suits and carrying guns detached selves and headed my way. Burned both. One pea-suited man with gun looks like another. I suppose they took me for one of their flankers. And to me, they look no different from Finn's men at a distance, save that I never thought about it. A new chum doesn't move the way a copper does. He moves feet too high and always scrambling for traction. Not that I stopped to analyze, not even earthworms kill. Saw them, burned them. They were sliding softly along floor before I realized what I'd done. Stopped, intended to grab their guns, but were chained to them. I couldn't figure out how to get loose. Key needed, perhaps. Besides, we're not lasers, but something I had never seen. Real guns. 5 small explosive missiles, I learned later. Just then, all I knew was no idea how to use. Had spearing knives on ends too, sort called bayonets, which was reason I tried to get them loose. Own gun was good for only 10 full power burns and no spare power pack. Those spearing bayonets looked useful. One had blood on it. Loony blood, I assume. But gave up in seconds only. Used belt knife to make dead sure they stayed dead. And hurried toward fight. Thumb on switch. Was a mob, not a battle. Or maybe a battle is always that way. Confusion and noise and nobody really knowing what's going on. In widest part of Causeway, opposite Beaumarchais, where Grand Ramp slopes northward down from level 3, were several hundred loonies. Men and women and children who should have been at home. Less than half were in pea suits, and only a few seemed to have weapons. And pouring down ramp were soldiers, all armed. But first thing I noticed was noise. Din had filled my open helmet and beat on ears. A growl. Don't know what else to call it. Was compounded of every anger human throat can make, from squeals of small children to bull roars of grown men. Sounded like biggest dogfight in history. And suddenly realized I was adding my share, shouting obscenities and wordless yells. Girl, no bigger than Hazel, vaulted up onto a rail of ramp. Went dancing up in centimeters from shoulders of troopers pouring down. She was armed with what appeared to be a kitchen cleaver. Saw her swing it. Saw it connect. Couldn't have hurt him much through his pea suit, but he went down, and more stumbled over him. Then one of them connected with her, spearing a bayonet into her thigh, and over backward she went, falling out of sight. Couldn't really see what was going on, nor could remember, just flashes, like girl going over backwards. Don't know who she was, don't know if she survived, couldn't draw a bead from where I was, too many heads in way. There was an open counter display, front of a toy shop on my left. I bounced up onto it. Put me a meter high in Causeway pavement with a clear view of earthworms pouring down. Braced self against wall, took careful aim, trying for left chest. Some uncountable time later found that my laser was no longer working, so stopped. Guess 8 troopers did not go home because of me, but hadn't counted, and time really did seem endless. Although everybody moving fast as possible looked and felt like instruction movie where everything is slow to frozen motion. At least once while using up my power pack, some earthworm spotted me and shot back. Was explosion just over my head, and bits of shop wall hit helmet. Perhaps that happened twice. Once out of juice I jumped out from toy counter, club laser, and joined mob, surging against foot of ramp. All this endless time, 5 minutes, earthworms had been shooting into crowd. You could hear sharp splat, and sometimes plop. Those little missiles made as they exploded inside flesh, or louder plunk, if they hit a wall or something solid. We're still trying to reach foot of ramp when I realized they were no longer shooting. We're down. We're dead. Every one of them. We're no longer coming down ramp. 24. All through Luna, invaders were dead. If not that instant, then shortly. Over 2,000 troopers dead. More than 3 times that number of loonies died in stopping them. Plus, perhaps as many loonies wounded. A number never counted. No prisoners taken in any war, although we got 12 officers and crew from each ship when we mopped up. A major reason why loonies, mostly unarmed, were able to kill armed and trained soldiers lay in fact that a freshly landed earthworm can't handle himself well. Our gravity, 1/6 what he is used to, makes all his lifelong reflexes his enemy. He shoots high without knowing it. He's unsteady on feet. Can't run properly. Feet slide out from under him. Still worse, those troopers had to fight downwards. They necessarily broke in at upper levels, then had to go down ramps again and again to try to capture a city. And earthworms don't know how to go down ramps. Motion isn't running, isn't walking, isn't flying, is more a controlled dance, with feet barely touching and simply guiding balance. A loony 3 years old does it without thinking, comes skipping down in a guided fall, toes touching every few meters. But an earthworm new chums it, finds self walking on air. He struggles, rotates, loses control, winds up at bottom, unhurt, but angry. But these troopers wound up dead. Was on ramps we get them. Those I saw had mastered tricks somewhat, had come down 3 ramps alive. Nevertheless, only a few snipers at top of ramp landing could fire effectively. Those on ramp had all they could do to stay upright, hang on to weapons, try to reach level below. Loonies did not let them. Men and women, and many children, surged up at them, downed them, killed them with everything from their hands to their own bayonets. Nor was I only laser gun around. 2 of Then's men swarmed up on balcony of Bon Marché, and, crouching there, picked off snipers at top of ramp. Nobody told them to. Nobody led them. Nobody gave orders. Finn never had a chance to control his half-trained disorderly militia. Fight started. They fought. And that was biggest reason why we loonies won. We fought. Most loonies never laid eyes on a live invader. But wherever troopers broke in, loonies rushed in like white corpuscles and fought. Nobody told them. Our feeble organization broke down under surprise. But we loonies fought berserk, and invaders died. No trooper got farther down than level 6 in any war. They say that people in Bottom Alley never knew we were invaded until over. But invaders fought well too. These troops were not only crack riot troops, best peace and forces for city work FN had, they also had been indoctrinated and drugged. Indoctrination had told them, correctly, that their only hope of going Earthside again was to capture Warrens and pacify them. If they did, they were promised relief, and no more duty in Luna. It was win or die. Forwards pointed out that their transports could not take off if they did not win, as they had to be replenished with reaction mass. Impossible without first capturing Luna, and this was true. Then they were loaded with energizers, don't worries and fear inhibitors that would make mouse spit at cat, and turned loose. They fought professionally, and, quite fearlessly, died. In Tycho Under and in Churchill they used gas, and casualties were more one-sided. Only those loonies who managed to reach pea suits were effective. Outcome was same, simply took longer. With knockout gases, authority had no intention of killing us all. Simply wanted to teach us a lesson. Get us under control. Put us to work. Reason for FN's long delay and apparent indecision arose from method of sneak attack. Decision had been made shortly after we embargoed grain, so we learned from captured transport officers. Time was used in mounting attack, much of it in a long elliptical orbit which went far outside Luna's orbit, crossing ahead of Luna, then looping back and making rendezvous above far side. Of course, Mike never saw them. He's blind back there. He had been skywatching with his ballistic radars, but no radar can look over horizon. Longest look Mike got at any ship in orbit was 8 minutes. They came skimming peaks in tight, circular orbits, each straight for target, with a fast didal landing at end, sitting them down with high G, precisely at New Earth, 12 October 76. Greenwich, 18 hours, 40 minutes, 36.9 seconds. If not, at that exact 10 to the second, then as close to it as Mike could tell from blip tracks. Elegant work, one must admit, on part of FN Peace Navy. Big brute that poured 1,000 troops into L City, Mike did not see until it chopped off for grounding. A glimpse. He would have been able to see it a few seconds sooner, had he been looking eastward with new radar at Mariandar in sight. But happened he was drilling his idiot sound at time, and they were looking through it westward at Terra. Not that those seconds would have mattered. Surprise was so beautifully planned, so complete, that each landing force was crashing in at Greenwich 1900 all over Luna, before anybody suspected. No accident that it was just New Earth with all Warrens in semi-bright lunar. Authority did not really know lunar conditions, but did know that no luna goes up on the surface unnecessarily during bright semi-lunar, and if he must, then does whatever he must do quickly as possible, and gets down inside and checks his radiation counter. So, they caught us with our pea suits down, and our weapons. But with troopers dead, we still had 6 transports on our surface, and a command ship in our sky. Once Bon Marché engagement was over, I got hold of Self and found a phone. No word from Kongville. No word from Proof. Chase City fight had been won. Same for Novelin. Transport there had toppled on landing. Invading force had been under strength from landing losses, and Finn's boys now held disabled transport. Still fighting at Churchill and Tycho Under. Nothing going on in other warrens. Mike had shut down tubes and was reserving inter-warren phone links for official calls. An explosive pressure drop in Churchill Upper. Uncontrolled. Yes, Finn had checked in and could be reached. So I talked to Finn. Told him where L City transport was. Arranged to meet at the easement lock 13. Finn had much same experience as I. Called cold, said he did have pea suit. Had not been able to establish control over laser gunners until fight was over, and himself had fought solo in massacre in Old Dome. Now was beginning to round up his lads, and had one officer taking reports from Finn's office in Bon Marché. Had reached Novelin sub-commander, but was worried about HKL. Many should I move men there by tube. Told them to wait. They couldn't get at us by tube. Not while we controlled power, and doubted if that transport would lift. Let's look at this one. So we went out through Lock 13, cleared the end of private pressure, on through farm tunnels of a neighbor, who could not believe we had been invaded, and used his surface lock to eyeball transport from a point nearly a kilometer west of it. We were cautious in lifting hatch lid. Then pushed it up, and climbed out. A outcropping of rocks shielded us. We, red Indianed around edge and looked, using helmet binocs. They withdrew behind rock and talked. Finn said, "Think my lads can handle this." How? If I tell you, you'll think of reasons why it wouldn't work. So, how about letting me run my own show cover? I've heard of armies where boss is not told to shut up. Word is discipline. But we were amateurs. Finn allowed me to tag along, unarmed. Took him an hour to put it together, 2 minutes to execute. He scattered a dozen men around ship, using former surface locks, radio silence throughout. Anyhow, some did not have peace suit radios. City boys. Finn took position farthest west. When he was sure others had had time, he sent up a signal rocket. When flare burst over ship, everybody burned at once, each working on a pre-designated antenna. Finn used up his power pack, replaced it, and started burning into hull. Not door lock hull. At once, his cherry red spot was joined by another, then 3 more, all working on the same bit of steel. And suddenly, molten steel splattered out, and you could see air, whoosh, out of ship. A shimmery plume of refraction. They kept working on it, making it a nice big hull, until they ran out of power. I could imagine, hurrah, inside ship. Alarms clanging, emergency doors closing. Crew trying to seal 3 impossibly big holes at once. The rest of Finn's squad, scattered around ship, were giving treatment to 2 other spots at hull. But I didn't try to burn anything else. Was a non-atmosphere ship, built in orbit, with pressure hulls separate from power plant and tanks. They gave treatment where it would do most good. Finn pressed helmet to mine. Can't lift now. And can't talk. Doubt they can make hull tight enough to live without pea suits. Let's say we let her sit a few days and see if they come out. If they don't, they can move a heavy drill up here and give them a real dose of fun. Decided Finn knew how to run his show without my sloppy help. So went back inside, called Mike, and asked for Capsule to go out to ballistic radars. He wanted to know why I didn't stay inside where it was safe. I said, listen, you upstart collection of semiconductors. You are merely a minister with a portfolio, while I am Minister of Defense. I have to see what's going on, and I have exactly 2 eyeballs, while you've got eyes spread over half of Chrysium. You tried to hog fun. He told me not to jump salty and offered to put his displays on video screen, saying room ale of raffles, did not want me to get hurt. And had I heard joke about Droven, who hurt his mother's feelings. I said, Mike, please, let me have a capsule. Can pea suit and meet it outside Station West, which is in bad shape, as I'm sure you know. Okay, he said, it's your neck. 13 minutes. I'll let you go as far as Gun Station George. Mighty kind of him. Got there and got on fun again. Finn had called other warrants, located his subordinate commanders, and somebody willing to take charge, and had explained how to make trouble for grounded transports. All but Hong Kong. For all we knew, authorities' goons held Hong Kong. Adam, he said, others being in earshot, do you think we might send a crew out by Rolligan and try to repair Link BL? This is not Cospa Celine. Mike answered in a strange voice. This is one of his assistants. Adam Celine was in Churchill Upper when it lost pressure. I'm afraid that we must assume that he is dead. What? I'm very sorry, Gus Jean. Halt thumb. Chased a couple of drillmen and a girl out of room, then sat down and lowered Hushwood. Mike, I said softly. Quiet now. What is this gum beating? Man, he said quietly. Think it over. Adam Celine had to go someday. He served his purpose and is, as you pointed out, almost out of the government. Professor and I have discussed this. The only question has been the timing. Can you think of a better last use for Adam than to have him die in this invasion? It makes him a national hero, and the nation needs one. Let it stand that Adam Celine is probably dead until you can talk to Professor. If he still needs Adam Celine, it can turn out that he was trapped in a private crusher and had to wait to be rescued. Well, okay, let it stay open. Personally, I always preferred your Mike personality anyhow. I know you do, man, my first and best friend, and so do I. It's my real one. Adam was a phony. Yes. But, Mike, if Prof is dead in Congo, I'm going to need help from Adam awful bad. So we've got him iced. I can bring him back if we need him. The stuffed shirt. Man, when this is over, are you going to have time to take up with me that research into humor again? I'll take time, Mike. That's a promise. Thanks, man. These days, you and Wyle never have time to visit, and Professor wants to talk about things that aren't much fun. I'll be glad when this war is over. Are we going to win, Mike? He chuckled. Ha ha ha. It's been days since you asked me that. Here's a pinky new projection, run since invasion started. Hold on tight, man. Our chances are now even. Good bug. So button up and go see the fun. But stay back at least 100 meters from the gun. That ship may be able to follow back a laser beam with another one. Ranging shortly. 21 minutes. Didn't get that far away, as needed to stay on phone, and longest quarter round was less. I jacked parallel into gun captain's phone, found a shade of rock, and sat down. Sun was high in west, so close to Terra that I could see Terra only by visoring against the sun's glare. No crescent yet. New Earth ghostly gray and moonlight surrounded by a thin radiance of atmosphere. I pulled my helmet back into shade. Ballistic control. O'Kelly Davis now as a drill gun at George. Near it, I mean, about 100 meters. Figured Mike would not be able to tell how long a cord I was using out of kilometers of wires. Ballistic control, aye aye. Mike answered without argument. I will so inform HQ. Thank you, Ballistic Control. Ask HQ if they have heard from Congressman Wyoming Davis today. Was fretted about Wyle and all family. I will inquire. Mike waited a reasonable time, then said, HQ says that goes by Jar Wyoming Davis has taken charge of first aid work in Old Dome. Thank you. Chest suddenly felt better. Don't love Wyle more than others, but, well, she was new, and Luna needed her. Ranging, Mike said briskly. All guns, elevation 870. Azimuth 1930. Set parallax for 1300 kilometers, closing to surface. Report when I'm old. I stretched out, pulling knees up to stay in shade, and search part of sky indicated. Almost zenith, and it touched south. With sunlight not on my helmet, I could see stars, but inner part of binocs were hard to position. Had to twist around and raise up on right elbow. Nothing. Hold it. Was star with disk, where no planet ought to be. Noted another star close, watched and waited. Growing brighter and creeping north very slowly. Hey, that brute is going to land right on us. But 1300 kilometers is a long way, even when closing to terminal velocity. Remind itself that it couldn't fall on us from a departure ellipse looping back. Would have to fall around Luna, unless ship had maneuvered into new trajectory, which Mike hadn't mentioned. Wanted to ask, decided not to. Wanted him to put all his savvy into analyzing that ship, not distract him with questions. All guns reported eyeball tracking, including 4 Mike was laying himself via Selsons. Those 4 reported tracking dead on by eyeball without touching manual controls. Good news. Meant that Mike had that baby taped, had solved trajectory perfectly. Surely it was clear that ship was not falling around Luna, was coming in for landing. Didn't need to ask. It was getting much brighter, and position against stars was not changing. Damn, it was going to land on us. 500 kilometers closing. Mike said quietly. Stand by to burn. All guns on remote control. Override manual to command burn. 80 seconds. Longest minute and 20 seconds I've ever met. That brute was big. Mike called every 10 seconds down to 30, then started chanting seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, burn. And ship suddenly got much brighter. Almost missed a little speck that it touched itself just before, or just at burn. But Mike said suddenly, missile launched. Self and guns track with me. Do not override. Other guns stay on ship. Be ready for new coordinates. A few seconds, 4 hours later, he gave the coordinates and added, "Eyeball and bird at will." I tried to watch ship and missile both. Lost both. Jerked eyes away from binoculars. Suddenly saw a missile. Then saw it impact between us and catapult head. Closer to us. Less than a kilometer. No, it did not go off. Not an H fusion reaction. Or I wouldn't be telling this. But made a big, bright explosion of its own. Remaining fuel, I guess. Silver bright even in sunlight. And shortly, I felt, heard, ground wave. But nothing was hurt but a few cubic meters of rock. Ship was still coming down. No longer burned bright. Could see it as a ship now. And didn't seem hurt. Expected any instant the tail of fire dish it out. Stop it into a tidal landing. Did not. Impacted 10 kilometers north of us. And made a fancy silvery half-dome before it gave up. And quit being anything but spots before eyes. Mike said, "Report casualties. Secure all guns. Go below when secured." Gun Alice, no casualties. Gun Bambi, no casualties. Gun Caesar, one none hit by rock splinter. Pressure contained. Went below. To that proper phone. Called Mike. "What happened, Mike?" "Wouldn't they give you control after you burned their eyes out?" "They gave me control, man." "Too late." "I crashed it, man. It seemed the prudent course." An hour later was down with Mike. First time in 4 or 5 months. Could reach complex hunger more quickly than Hill City. And was in as close touch there with anybody as would be in city. With no interruptions. Needed to talk to Mike. I had tried to phone Wyo from Catapult Head Tube Station. Reached somebody at Old Dome Temporary Hospital and learned that Wyo had collapsed and been bedded down herself with enough sleepy time to keep her out for a night. Finn had gone to Churchill with a capsule of his lads. 2-liter tack on transport there. Stu I hadn't heard from. Hong Kong and Prof were still cut off. At the moment, Mike and I seemed to be total government. And time to start Operation Hard Rock. But Hard Rock was not just throwing rocks. Was also telling Tara what we were going to do and why. And our just cause for doing so. Prof and Stu and Sheeny and Adam had all worked on it. A dummy up, based on an assumed attack. Now attack had come, and propaganda had to be varied to fit. Mike had already rewritten it, and put it through a printout so I could study it. I looked up from a long roll of paper. Mike, these news stories and our message to FN all assume that we have won in Hong Kong. How sure are you? Probability in excess of 82%. Is that good enough to send these out? Man, the probability that we will win there, if we haven't already, approaches certainty. That transport can't move. The others were dry, or nearly. There isn't that much monatomic hydrogen in HKL. They would have to come here, which means moving troops overland by Rulligan. A rough trip with the sun up, even for loonies. Then defeat us when they get here. They can't. This assumes that that transport and its troops are no better armed than the others. How about that repair crew? To BL? I say not to wait. Man, I've used your voice freely and made all preparations. Horror pictures, Old Dome and elsewhere, especially Churchill Upper, for video. Stories to match. We should channel news Earthside at once and announce execution of Hard Rock at same time. I took a deep breath. Execute Operation Hard Rock. Want to give the order yourself? Say it aloud and I'll match it. Voice and choice of words. Go ahead, say it your way. Use my voice and my authority as Minister of Defense and acting head of government. Do it, Mike. Throw rocks at him. Damn it, big rocks. Heat 'em hard. Righto, man. 25. A maximum of instructive Schrecklichkeit with minimum loss of life. None, if possible. Was our proof summed up doctrine of Operation Hard Rock? And was way Mike and I carried it out? Idea was to hit earthworms so hard would convince them, while hitting so gently as not to hurt. Sounds impossible, but wait. Would necessarily be a delay while rocks fell from Luna to Terra. Could be as little as around 10 hours to as long as we dared to make it. Departure speed from a catapult is highly critical, and a variation on the order of 1% could double or half trajectory time, Luna to Terra. This Mike could do with extreme accuracy. Was equally at home with a slow ball, many sorts of curves, or burn it right over plate. And I wish he had pitched for Yankees. But no matter how he threw them, final velocity at Terra would be close to Terra's escape speed. Nearly enough, 11 kilometers per second, as to make no difference. That terrible speed results from gravity well, shaped by Terra's mass. 80 times that of Luna, and made no real difference whether Mike pushed the missile gently over a well curb or flipped it briskly. It was not muscle that counted, but great depth of that well. So, Mike could program rock throwing to suit time needed for propaganda. He and Prof had settled on 3 days, plus not more than one apparent rotation of Terra. 24 hours, 50 minutes, 28.32 seconds, to allow our first target to reach initial point of program. You see, while Mike was capable of hooking a missile around Terra and hitting a target on its far side, he could be much more accurate if he could see his target, follow it down by radar during the last minutes, and nudge it a little for pinpoint accuracy. We needed this extreme accuracy to achieve maximum frightfulness with minimum to zero killing. Call our shots, tell them exactly where they would be hit, and at what second, and give them 3 days to get off that spot. So, our first message to Terra at 0200, 13 October 76, 7 hours after they invaded, not only announced destruction of their task force, and denounced invasion for brutality, but also promised retaliation bombing, named times and places, and gave each nation a deadline by which to denounce FN's action, recognize us, and thereby avoid being bombed. Each deadline was 24 hours before local strike. Was more time than Mike needed. That long before impact, the rock for a target would be in space a long way out. Its guidance thrusters still unused and plenty of elbow room. With considerably less than a full day's warning, Mike could miss Terra entirely, kick that rock sideways, and make it fall around Terra in a permanent orbit. But with even an hour's warning, he could usually abort into an ocean. First target was North American Directorate. All great Peace Force nations, 7 veto powers, would be hit. NA Directorate, Great China, India, Soviet Union, and Africa, Chad exempted, Middle Europa, Brazilian Union. Minor nations were assigned targets in times too, but we're told that not more than 20% of these targets would be hit. Hardly shortage of steel, but also frightfulness. If Belgium was hit first time around, Holland might decide to protect their polders by dealing out before Luna was again high in her sky. But every target was picked to avoid, if possible, killing anybody. For Middle Europa, this was difficult. Our targets had to be water or high mountains. Adriatic, North Sea, Baltic, so forth. But on most of Terra is open space, despite 11 billion busy breeders. North America had struck me as horribly crowded, but her billion people are clumped. It's still wasteland, mountain and desert. We laid down a grid on North America to show how precisely we could hit. Mike felt that 50 meters would be a large error. We had examined maps and Mike had checked by radar all even intersections. Say 105 degrees west by 50 degrees north. If no town there, might wind up on target grid, especially if a town was close enough to provide spectators to be shocked and frightened. We warned that our bombs would be as destructive as H-bombs, but emphasized that there would be no radioactive fallout, no killing radiation, just a terrible explosion, shockwave in air, ground wave of concussion. We warned that these might knock down buildings far outside of explosion, and then left it to their judgments how far to run. If they clogged their roads, fleeing from panic rather than real danger, well, that was fine. Just fine. But we emphasized that nobody would get hurt who heeded our warnings. and every target first time around would be uninhabited. We even offered to skip any target if a nation would inform us that our data were out of date. Empty offer. My radar vision was a cosmic 2020. But by not saying what would happen second time around, we hinted that our patience could be exhausted. In North America, grid was parallels. 35, 40, 45, 50 degrees north crossed by meridians. 110, 115, 120 west. 12 targets. For each, we added a folksy message to natives such as Target 115 west by 35 north. Impact will be displaced 45 kilometers northwest to exact top of New York Peak. Citizens of Goffs, Seaman, Kelso, and Nipton, please note. Target 100 west by 40 north is north 30 degrees west of Norton, Kansas. At 20 kilometers or 13 English miles, residents of Norton, Kansas and of Beaver City and Wilsonville, Nebraska are cautioned. Stay away from glass windows. It is best to wait indoors at least 30 minutes after impact because of possibility of long, high splashes of rock. Flash should not be looked at with bare eyes. Impact will be exactly 0300 your local zone time, Friday, 16 October, or 0900 Greenwich time. Good luck. Target 110 west by 50 north. Impact will be offset 10 kilometers north. People of Walsh, Saskatchewan, please note. Besides this grid, a target was selected in Alaska. 150 west by 60 north. And 2 in Mexico. 110 west by 30 north. 105 west by 25 north. So they would not feel left out. And several targets in the crowded east. Mostly water, such as Lake Michigan, halfway between Chicago and Grand Rapids, and Lake Okeechobee in Florida. Where we use bodies of water make work predictions of flooding waves for impacts, a time for each shoreline establishment. For 3 days, starting early morning Tuesday 13th, and going on to strike time early Friday 16th, we flooded Earth with warnings. England was cautioned that impact north of Dover Straits, opposite London estuary, would cause disturbances far up Thames. Soviet Union was given warning for Sea of Azov, and had own grid defined. Great China was assigned grid in Siberia, Gobi Desert, and her far west, with offsets to avoid her historic grid wall, noted in loving detail. Pan-Africa was awarded shots into Lake Victoria, still desert part of Sahara, one on Drakensberg in south, one offset 20 kilometers due west of Great Pyramid, and urged to follow Chad not later than midnight Thursday Greenwich. India was told to watch certain mountain peaks and outside Bombay Harbor. Time, same as Great China, and so forth. Attempts were made to jam our messages, but we were beaming straight down on several wavelengths. Hard to stop. Warnings were mixed with propaganda, white and black, news of failed invasion, horror pictures of dead, names and ID numbers of invaders. Addressed to Red Cross and Crescent, but in fact a grim boast, showing that every trooper had been killed, and that all ship's officers and crew had been killed or captured. We regretted being unable to identify dead of flagship, as it had been shot down with destruction so complete as to make it impossible. But our attitude was conciliatory. Look, people of Terra, we don't want to kill you. In this necessary retaliation, we are making every effort to avoid killing you. But if you can't or won't get your governments to leave us in peace, then we shall be forced to kill you. We're up here, you're down there. You can't stop us, so please, be sensible. We explained over and over how easy it was for us to hit them, how hard for them to reach us. Nor was this exaggeration. It's barely possible to launch missiles from Terra to Luna. It's easier to launch from Earth, parking orbit, but very expensive. The practical way to bomb us was from ships. This we noted and asked them how many multi-million-dollar ships they cared to use up trying it. What was it worth to try to spank us for something we had not done? It had cost them 7 of their biggest and best already. Did they want to try for 14? If so, our secret weapon that we used on FNS hacks was waiting. Last above was a calculated bust. Mike figured less than 1 chance in 1,000 that Pax had been able to get off a message reporting what had happened to her. And it was still less likely that proud FN would guess that convict miners could convert their tools into space weapons. Nor did FN have many ships to risk. We're about 200 space vehicles in commission, not counting satellites. But 9/10 of these were Terra-to-orbit ships such as Lark, and she had been able to make a Luna jump only by stripping down and arriving dry. Spaceships aren't built for no purpose. Too expensive. FN had 6 cruisers that could probably bomb us without landing on Luna to refill tanks, simply by swapping payload for extra tanks. And several more which might be modified much as Lark had been, plus a few convict and cargo ships which could get into orbit around Luna, but could never go home without refilling tanks. Was no possible doubt that FN could defeat us. Question was, how high a price would they pay? So we had to convince them the price was too high before they had time to bring enough force to bear. A poker game. We intended to raise so steeply that they would fold and drop out. We hoped. And then never have to show our busted flesh. Communication with Hong Kong Luna was restored at end of first day of radio-video phase, during which time Mike was throwing rocks, getting first bars lined up. Proof called, and I was happy to hear. Mike briefed him. Then I waited, expecting one of his mild reprimands, bracing himself to answer sharply. And what was I supposed to do? With you out of touch and possibly dead? Me left alone as acting head of government, and crisis on top of this. Throw it away just because you couldn't be reached. Never got to say it. Proof said. You did. Exactly right, Manuel. You were acting head of government, and a crisis was on top of you. I'm delighted that you did not throw away the golden moment merely because I was out of touch. What can you do with a bloke like that? Me, with heat up to red mark, and no chance to use it. Had to swallow and say, Spasibo, Proof. Proof confirmed death of Adam Celine. We could have used the fiction a little longer, but this is the perfect opportunity. Mike, you and Manuel have matters in hand. I had better stop off at Churchill on my way home and identify his body. So he did. Whether Proof picked a loony body or trooper, I never asked. Nor how he silenced anybody else involved. Perhaps no, as many bodies in Churchill Upper were never identified. This one was right size and skin color. It had been explosively decompressed and burned in face. Looked awful. It lay in state in old dome with face covered, and was speech-making I didn't listen to. Mike didn't miss a word. His most human quality was his conceit. Some rocket wanted to embalm this dead flesh, giving Lenin as a precedent. But Pravda pointed out that Adam was a staunch conservationist and would never want this barbaric exception made. So, this unknown soldier, or citizen soldier, wound up in our city's cloaca. Which forces me to tell something I've put off. Lyle was not hurt, merely exhausted. But Ludmilla never came back. I did not know it. Glad I didn't. But she was one of many dead at foot of ramp, facing Beaumarchais. An explosive bullet hit between her lovely little girl breasts. Kitchen knife in her hand had blood on it. I think she had had time to pay Ferriman's fee. Stu came out the complex to tell me, rather than phoning. Then went back with me. Stu had not been missing. Once fight was over, he had gone to Raffles to work with his special codebook. But, that can wait. Mom reached him there, and he offered to break it to me. So then I had to go home for our crying together. Though, it is well that nobody reached me until after Mike and I started Hard Rock. When we got home, Stu did not want to come in, not being sure of our ways. And I came out and almost dragged him in. He was welcome and wanted. Many neighbors came to cry. Not as many as with most deaths. But we were just one of many families crying together that day. Did not stay long. Couldn't. Had work to do. I saw Miller just long enough to kiss her goodbye. She was lying in her room, and it looked as if she did be simply sleeping. Then I stayed a while with my beloveds before going back to pick up load. I never realized until that day how old Mimi is. Sure, she had seen many deaths. Some, her own descendants. But little Mila's death did seem almost too much for her. Ludmilla was special. Mimi's granddaughter. Daughter in all but fact. And my most special exception, and through Mimi's intervention, her co-wife. Most junior to most senior. Like all loonies, we conserve our dead. And I'm truly glad that barbaric custom of burial was left back on old Earth. Our way is better. But Davis family does not put that which comes out of processor into our commercial farming tunnels. No. It goes into our little greenhouse tunnel, there to become roses, and daffodils, and peonies among soft-singing bees. Tradition says that Blackjack Davis is in there, or whatever atoms of him do remain after many, many, many years of blooming. He's a happy place. A beautiful place. Came Friday, with no answer from FN. News up from our side seemed equal parts unwillingness to believe we had destroyed 7 ships and 2 regiments. FN had not even confirmed that a battle had taken place, and complete disbelief that we could bomb Terra, or could matter if we did. They still called it throwing rice. More time was given to World Series. Still worried because had received no answers to code messages. They had gone via Luno Hoko's commercial traffic to their Zurich agent, thence to Stu's Paris broker. From him, by less usual channels to Dr. Chan, with whom I had once had a talk, and with whom Stu had talked later, arranging a communication channel. Stu had pointed out to Dr. Chan that, since Great China was not to be bombed until 12 hours after North America, bombing of Great China could be aborted after bombing of North America was a proven fact, if Great China acted swiftly. Alternatively, Stu had invited Dr. Chan to suggest variations in target if our choices in Great China were not as deserted as we believed them to be. Stu fretted. Had placed great hopes in quasi-cooperation he had established with Dr. Chan. Me, I had never been sure. Only thing I was sure of was that Dr. Chan would not himself sit on a target, but he might not warn his old mother. My worries had to do with Mike. Sure, Mike was used to having many loads in trajectory at once, but had never had to astrogate more than one at a time. Now, he had hundreds, and had promised to deliver 29 of them simultaneously, to the exact second, at 29 pinpointed targets. More than that, for many targets he had backup missiles, to smear that target a second time, a third, or even a sixth, from a few minutes up to 3 hours after first strike. 4 great peace powers, and some smaller ones, had anti-missile defenses. Those of North America were supposed to be best, but was subject where even FN might not know. All attack weapons were held by peace forces, but defense weapons were each nation's own pigeon, and could be secret. Guesses range from India, believed to have no missile interceptors, to North America, believed to be able to do a good job. She had done fairly well in stopping intercontinental H missiles in wet firecracker war past century. Probably most of our rocks to North America would reach targets simply because aimed where was nothing to protect. But they couldn't afford to ignore a missile for Long Island Sound, or a rock for 87 degrees west by 42 degrees 30 minutes north. Lake Michigan, center of triangle formed by Chicago, Grand Rapids, Milwaukee. But that heavy gravity makes interception a tough job, and very costly. They were trying to stop us, only well worth it. But we couldn't afford to let them stop us. So some rocks were backed up with more rocks. What H-tipped interceptors would do to them, even Mike didn't know. Not enough data. Mike assumed that interceptors would be triggered by radar. But at what distance? Sure, close enough, and a steel case rock is incandescent gas a microsecond later. But is world the difference between a multi-ton rock and touchy circuitry of an H-missile? What would kill latter would simply shove one of our brutes violently aside, cause to miss. We needed to prove to them that we could go on throwing cheap rocks long after they ran out of expensive, $1 million, $100,000 H-tip interceptor rockets. If not proved first time, then next time Terra turned North America toward us, we would go after targets we had been unable to hit first time. Backup rocks for second pass, and for third, were already in space, to be nudged when needed. If 3 bombings on 3 rotations of Terra did not do it, we might still be throwing rocks in 77, till they ran out of interceptors, or till they destroyed us. Far more likely. For a century, North American Space Defense Command had been buried in a mountain south of Colorado Springs, Colorado, a city of no other importance. During Wet Firecracker War, the Cheyenne Mountain took a direct hit. Space Defense Command post survived, but not sundry deer, trees, most of city, and some off top of mountain. What we were about to do should not kill anybody, unless they stayed outside on that mountain, despite 3 days' steady warnings. But North American Space Defense Command was to